Welcome to the webinar on the use of mobile phone data for official statistics and indicators. As a side event of the 54th session of the United Nations Statistical Commission. My name is Karol Kovács, and I'm working at the Data Innovation and Capacity Development branch at the United Nations Statistics Division. The mobile phone data task team was established more than 5 years ago. One of the first of the task teams in the United Nations Committee of Experts on the use of big data and data science, and I have been involved in its work ever since. The task team consists of more than 50 experts from national statistical offices, private sector, academia, and international organizations. The task team recently published 5 methodological guides, about which we will hear shortly, plus a current work on the 6th guide. After that presentation, we're gonna to hear an overview of the application of the mobile phone data projects for official statistics around the world, and also we're gonna to hear some country cases. As a note, we will record this webinar, and the recording will be available along with the copy of the presentations at the website. So let's start. I would like to invite Esperanza McPantai, who is actually the chair of the task team, the mobile phone task team, a senior statistician at the International Telecommunication Union. Esperanza, please.
Thank you very much, Karol. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to present to you the applications of mobile phone big data. As Karol mentioned, I currently chair the task team, which is one of the task teams of the UNCEBD. We started a while back. As part of this diagram, you will see that we are one of the many task teams of the UNCEBD, and our focus is indeed on the use of mobile phone big data. We are a group of experts representing countries, international organizations, regional organizations, as well as NGOs who are working on mobile phone big data. We meet once a month, and this is particularly to discuss common issues and deliverables that we want to explore with regards to the use of mobile phone big data. The work of the task team is divided into 6 groups. So you can imagine there are many applications of mobile phone big data, but we are focusing on the 6 areas of statistics where this new data source could be used. These 6 areas look at different methodologies and experiences that are coming from countries who implemented the mobile phone projects. So the 6 areas include tourism statistics, migration statistics, census and dynamic population statistics, use of mobile phone big data in the displacement and disaster context, information society indicators, transport and commuting indicators. So these are the 6 broad areas, and we divide it among ourselves, the different experts who are leading this work to come up with methodologies and guides that will help countries to help implement the mobile phone project. And so as Karol mentioned, in November 2022, we released during the International Conference on Big Data 5 methodological guides. This is the first 5. Covering these broad areas of statistics. And the 6th one on transport and commuting is still a work in progress. So what I'm going to present to you this afternoon is basically some examples in these different areas where mobile phone big data was used. These guides, of course, I'm going to mention them one by one. You will see the list in the link provided below, and at the same time in the different slides where I mentioned the area of statistics. So the first one we look at was on tourism statistics, and you will see in this example that um, there's some data sources that could be used to traditional data sources that could be used, particularly surveys or immigration data, to compile information that relates to tourism. This is an example that was coming from Indonesia and looking at the cross-border between Indonesia and Timor-Leste. And with the use of mobile phone big data, the experience was that they were able to get more details with regards to the data on tourism, but at the same time, it is less costly because we know that implementing surveys is costly. But at the same time, it was able to cover areas that were not necessarily covered by immigration data. So you will be able to find more details on this experience at the methodological guide on tourism statistics. Another area that we look at is on migration indicators. This work was led by Statistics Georgia. And the work, the example here was coming from Estonia, where they look at census in 2021 and a comparison with the mobile phone big data. So here, what it illustrates is that mobile phone big data could be used to improve timeliness, access to information that are previously not available with regards to this type of indicators, as well as possibility for more granular data and calibration opportunities for existing data. So the link there is available for the guide on this set of indicators. The next one is on dynamic population mapping. This is an example, and the work was led by Positium. You will see here that the objective is indeed to map the population dynamically without being dependent on logistics of surveys and census, and to understand how the population behaves with regards to de facto presence at any time or even away from the place of residence. And here, what it illustrates is that you will be able to use mobile phone big data to identify resident population, daytime population, de facto population, monitoring population distributions caused by COVID-19 mobility restrictions, infrastructure and resource planning, creating dynamic sample frames for surveys and also for census, as well as in disaster preparedness. So they were able to illustrate the use of MPD for a dynamic population, which is also important for these 8 use cases. Again, the methodological guide concerning this indicator type is available in the link below. Another one that was previously mentioned was on displacement in disaster context. This is an example that was coming from FlowMinder. This guide was being led by University of Tokyo and with contributions also from FlowMinder and other experts. And here, they were able to map the population during the earthquake that happened in Haiti, and they were able to estimate the number of people that were displaced from the areas that were mostly impacted by the earthquake, and as well as areas that were disrupted by the effects of the earthquake. So the methodological guide is again available in the link provided below. And this particular example is on information society indicators, and these are the indicators that we in ITU particularly collects and disseminate. So we know that, for example, there's a lot of countries who are yet not able to collect data from official household surveys. And so here what we want to explore is how we will be able to use mobile phone big data to complement existing information or supplement the data that are missing in this type of indicator. So the indicator that we chose here is the percentage of population using the internet, which is an SDG indicator. And so from the experience of Brazil, where they piloted it in the city of Rio, in the metropolitan area of Rio, they were able to conclude that MPD could be used in comparison to the household survey data. So if a country is not able to conduct a household survey due to lack of resources, then they will be able to explore it using mobile phone big data. Again, the guide on this indicator, along with other sets of indicators where MPD was used, particularly those that are related to SDGs, are available in the guide on Information Society. And this one, the last one, is on transport statistics. As I mentioned, this is still a work in progress. So the subgroup is working on identifying how mobile phone big data could be used to develop an origin destination matrices between regions, how it could be used for public transport statistics, particularly when monthly passes are used, for urban mobility, especially for walking and cycling, as well as for transport and planning. So a guide will also be soon available in the UNSD website. So just to give you an example of how the guide looks like, so it looks at providing background information on why we need to look at this data. It looks at this data processing and access models, as well as methodologies on data processing related to the indicator of interest, as well as quality assurance and other examples that countries can use to look at the different sets of indicators that I mentioned. So as a way forward, there's a number of activities. I would like just to mention that there will be an awareness training course that will be presented to you later on. There will be also possibilities to have capacity building and awareness raising workshops through the regional hubs. And we will be developing additional training materials that could be used by countries who may want to explore this new data source. So I'll stop here. There are a lot of information available in the task team website, and I invite you to visit the links provided for more information. Back to you, Karoy, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Esperanza. So you made a job which I thought was impossible. I think it was informative, and sorry being compressed, but given the time, we would just want to give you an appetite for it. I placed also the link in the chat, so if you wanted to reach the guides, then please follow the link, and also you can reach out if you have any questions or concerns. And the next presentation is very much attached to this presentation, because we want to showcase you that there are many MPD projects, and there is no particular continent which is more ahead. So my dear colleague from Positium, Sim Esco, senior sales manager, who has been working with Positium with developing projects with mobile phone data in several countries of the world, and he was involved in projects in 4 continents. So Sim gonna to give you an overview of the projects currently running, and he would not have time to dig into many projects particularly, so it will be an overview. Sim, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Karai, and thank you, Esperanza. Yes, this is a continuation, and it's a rundown of all the examples of statistics projects based on mobile positioning data from around the world. I want to say all of them, but it's not possible to showcase all of the projects that have been ongoing. But I will focus on those that we know from the work of the MPD task team. So let's say you are interested in exploring how mobile positioning data, the data owned by mobile operators, could be used for statistics. And you're already starting out the project, or you have done experimentation and you want to understand who has the potential to use this MPD for statistics, what kind of areas. Is there an MPD project that I can learn from that is close to me, either mentally or physically, and where can you turn to get knowledge about how mobile phone data projects work, because you might be doing it for the first time. You want to expand on what you're doing already. So you might think that this is an innovative data set and there are not many projects going on. So is there actually anybody out there where I can turn or who I can ask some information from, and where I can learn, somebody who has already failed or succeeded, and I can learn from that? And it turns out there are already numerous mobile phone data projects. They are small, they are big, they are successes, they are failures, they're in one topic or another. And my job is to give you that understanding. So first off, I want to show you this picture. Unfortunately, we had the global pandemic, which united us with data. It turned out that analytics are very, very important to understand what is going on in this newly developed world, where we are stuck at home, or we should be stuck at home. Is the data supporting our decisions, and are the people doing as they are told? So a lot of countries actually turn to mobile phone operators to ask them if mobility of people has changed in some way or another. And this is an overview of all the countries of the world that have turned to mobile network operators for this kind of data. This is a study conducted by GSMA, which is the umbrella organization for all the mobile network operators of the world. And you can see already from this map that in 2020, many new mobile phone data projects started. And these were more, I wouldn't say more often than not, but very often driven by national governments and national statistical offices themselves. As these are organizations that were turned to give a new glimpse of what is going on in the country. So a new glimpse meant new data sources. And one of these projects actually that happened was a cross-country project done by the European Commission Joint Research Center. And in this project, data from, I believe, 16 countries all over Europe was gathered to study the functional areas of mobility that happened or were redesigned during mobile positioning during COVID-19 and through mobile positioning data. This was a huge undertaking by the European Commission to get access to this data in aggregate form from all different countries, and further expanded to understanding mobility indicators in 22 different EU countries, EU member states plus Norway. There were only a fraction of the countries that were not able to provide the data for some reason or another. So that's the COVID-19 picture. And this COVID-19, of course, it influenced a lot also our work in the MPD task team and the case studies that we covered in the methodological guides that Esperanza already presented. I want to give another picture of the different countries that were covered in these guides. So the guides on tourism, population, information society, migration, disaster statistics, and transport and commuting data. This is the global coverage of these guides in all of the countries of the world. So for each of these cases, there is information in the guides, and you can go and inspect that later. And not only have we compiled this data, but we've analyzed this, we have learned from it, we have researched it, and we have, together with the experts, provided you information that collates the experiences of these case studies in different topics, and provided this in a format that you can digest as a guide, as a methodological guide. And you can see that there are a various number of countries. There are some countries that don't even show up here because they are too small, but the MPD projects already covered by the guides covers 29% of the land area of the world. So almost 1/3 of the landmass of the globe is covered by MPD projects. And it covers 50% of the population of the world. Of course, largely thanks to China and other populous countries. The biggest and smallest are all covered, so there is no distinction of which country benefits more from MPD. There are cases from all over the world, from the biggest in China, the biggest in Southern Hemisphere is Indonesia, up to the smallest, like Curacao, which had a disaster statistics use case. And these span not only the last few years. I started with COVID-19 pandemic, but there are experiences on mobile positioning data being used for statistics for many, many years now. And the longest running MPD-based statistics time series in the world is 15 years. And this great honor goes to Estonia and the Central Bank of Estonia, which in collaboration with Positium, where I'm from, has produced data that spans 15 years now. And this is counting. So this year we will reach 16. In 2020, 40 projects were started on mobile phone data for COVID-19 mobility tracking alone, just in 2020. And many of these projects, they actually developed in some way or another into projects in 2021, 22, and not only in COVID-19 pandemic mobility tracking, but also for other statistical purposes. And maybe if you have not seen from the map, most of the world is now covered in a way that it's only 2 degrees of separation from your country, from any country of the world, to the nearest country that has some experience working with MPD for statistics. So if you do not have, if in your country, you don't have experience with MPD for statistics, your neighbor doesn't have any experience, then their neighbor probably has had. And the last map, or I think the previous to last map I want to show you is the map of the task team members of the MPD, which contributed to all of this work presented by Esperanza and myself. And these are both made up of both countries, so national statistical organizations, but also expert organizations from different countries. And you're all welcome to join as long as you have interest and some knowledge in mobile phone data projects. And regarding the expert companies, Flowminder will speak about the case studies. I want to also show you from my side, from Positium, just one company doesn't cover only experience from their own country, which is in Positium's case, this is Estonia, but we have done projects around the world. So even in certain organizations, you would have expertise that spans the globe. So, for example, companies like Positium or Flowminder. And there are many benefits why MPD projects should happen. I have to mention these. And not only is it very relevant for statistics, but you're able to do this in a very big country with relatively few resources. Just a few data scientists working on MPD can do the work of several thousand enumerators. So as a summary, if there's anything that I leave you with is that the international community fully supports the adoption of MPD for statistics. There are MPD projects in every part of the world and in every topic, at least in those topics that we've covered in the guides. And you can reach out to your neighbor or the international community for experience sharing. You are not alone out there.
Thank you very much, Sim. That was also very, very interesting, and I hope you get an appetite. And we would not hide that this project is not easy, but what we want to showcase you that it's possible, and that would lead us to the next presentation, which is very fresh. So we would like to talk a little bit about steps towards an open methodological standard for the use of mobile network operator data in Europe. So my good colleague from Eurostat, Fabio Riccato, a statistical officer working at the Unit A5, dealing with methodology and innovation in official statistics. And by background, Fabio is an electrical engineer, but he dirty his hands in actually working for mobile network in the field of mobile networks and mobile traffic analysis, and he was also teaching, so he has a rich background. Fabio, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Can you hear me well?
Perfectly.
Okay.
And we see your presentation.
Yeah. So in this presentation, I will give a very short view of what we are doing in Eurostat and in the European statistical system on mobile network operator data. MNO data is the name, is how we call the data that are collected on the side of the mobile telecom operator. Upon interaction between the mobile network and the mobile phone data. So we are focusing on telecom operators. There are other kinds of mobile phone data that are produced directly on the device and reported to app or to Android or Apple operating system. These other kinds are not in the scope of our work. So after clarifying, the methodology, the terminology, I would like to highlight that the work in the European statistical system around MNO data is based on a vision and on the ambition that within this decade, MNO data will be used as a data source to produce regular official statistics. So not just experimental statistics of case study, but regular statistical production based on sustainable partnerships between the statistical authorities and the data providers, meaning the MNOs, based on data from all the main MNOs in each and every European country. So we are aiming at integrating information from multiple telecom operators within and across European countries, possibly also in combination with the external data, non-MNO based, be that survey data, census data, or other kind of big data sources, for instance, for calibration and stabilization of the final statistics. Of course, incorporating ultra strong data protection measures to not only to comply with GDPR, but also to protect the business secrecy of the data, and all that based on a common, standardized, and fully open and reproducible methodology framework, which includes also a quality framework. So all these conditions we are aiming to install, and I would like to. I see this a little bit as an. I make the analogy with an electrical circuit, where if we want to turn on the light bulb that would represent the statistics based on MNO data, we have to close a number of switch. And the project I'm going to present is focusing on only one switch, on the methodological switch, and we work under the reasonably ambitious assumptions that the other switch are being taken care on other tables, legislative, business model, and etc. It is obvious why when you aim at integrating information between different MNO, you need a common standard, a common methodological standard, because you want to integrate information that must have the same meaning, and the meaning of some measurements in general depends on how these measurements have been collected. This is true in general, but even more so when the source data have an intrinsic complexity like MNO data have. Also, transparency and openness are at the center of our attention, because we want the users of these statistics to be able to correctly interpret the numbers, and you cannot correctly interpret the numbers if you don't have the possibility to look to inspect in a lot of detail how these numbers were produced. So the project that I'm going to refer in the remaining part of this short presentation, meaning the so-called multi-MNO project, is not an isolated step, but it's rather like one step in a path that the ESS and Eurostat are working towards the vision and ambition that I mentioned before. There have been several projects in the past with more explorative nature, both at the European level and many also at the national level. Not surprisingly, many of them starting, as Asim mentioned before, in the last years due to COVID. The ESS, the European Statistical System, has started a task force that focuses on methodological aspects on MNO data within the European context. And there will be other projects also that are in preparation, more with a research orientation, for instance, towards focusing on the integration of MNO and non-MNO data. But the project that you see at the center of these slides, the multi-MNO project that is starting right now, is a first of its kind project in the European statistical system, in that it gathers a mixed team of industry experts and NSI experts together to develop together a proposal for an open methodological standard. Along with a fully open source software implementation in order to allow, let's say, reproducibility of the methodology in every detail, and also demonstrate the methodology, the would-be methodological standard on real-world data across different MNOs from different countries. So that's the multi-MNO project. As I said, is very recent. So we started in January of this year. So it's a newborn project. It was awarded to a consortium after a public call for tenders following European public procurement rules. The winning consortium is composed by GOPA, Positium and Nomon, two small companies specialized in mobile phone data, two NSI, Statistical Institute of Italy and of Netherlands, and there are also 5 mobile network operators that contribute as subcontractors and have committed to make their data available for demonstration purposes. And out of these 5 operators from 4 countries, European countries, that means that in one country we will have 2 competing operators joining the project. There will be also an advisory board composed of individual experts that will advise the project. So what the project is expected, is required to do within the next 2.5 years. So the project will terminate mid-2025. The team will have to select a few demonstrative use cases in various domains: tourism, demography, probably also commuting, and so forth, with a strong attention also to cross-border and international use cases. Based on that selection, they will have to develop a proposal for a comprehensive methodological framework for transforming MNO data into statistics. And when I say comprehensive, I mean that also not only methods and algorithms, but also processes and quality aspects should be part of the definition. if successful, this proposal can later be endorsed by the ESS as a standard. The methodology that we aim for should be completely open, transparent and fully reproducible. So not only there will be a reference software pipeline to be released open source, will be developed and released during the project, along with, of course, detailed documentation, but also complemented by whatever is needed to enable independent parties, being the industry, NSI, or even university, to develop alternative implementation that comply with the standard. Implementation that can be also proprietary, but based on a common and open standard. And finally, the project, as I said before, will demonstrate its feasibility on real-world data from 5 different MNO from 4 countries. I would like to stress that in the project, no personal identifiable information will be transferred to, be moved out of the MNO premises. All the processing will be executed locally at the MNO, and only aggregate and non-personal identifiable information will be exported outside the MNO, only the final statistics. So there's no flow of personal data outside the point where these personal data are produced. And this is the last slide. I would like to stress that this peculiar, let's say, aim of the project is to develop a methodology that takes a pan-European perspective. So the methodology needs to be sufficiently flexible to be adapted to work across different MNOs in different countries, under the assumption that data access conditions will be at least comparable across these countries, and will be tailored to the European state of play in mobile technology, in mobile usage, and also in the statistical needs. So in this sense, we are looking at different countries within Europe, which is a relatively homogeneous space with respect to the state of mobile technology and behavior of the mobile users. And also, we are very well aware that the standard is not a static object that is developed once and then remain static for a long time. It's an evolutionary object that has to be kept, has to evolve and grow. And we have given to the consortium the task of trying to anticipate the possible evolution of this standard and try to design already now to prepare, not to implement, but to prepare for the possible evolution, direction, and methods and extension that might be needed tomorrow to be implemented. So you have to prepare now what will be implemented tomorrow. And with that, I conclude. Here are the links for some landing page for the project, which is still under construction. As I say, the project is only a few weeks born, so a nice and fancy project website will be available in the coming weeks. But for the moment, we may use this link as a reference. Thanks, Carol. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Fabio. So this is really fresh from the oven, but we thought it would be very informative to spread this very good news. And let me use also what you just said, Fabio. We really hope that we bridge, your knowledge to our methodological guides. And as you said, these are not static, guides. They are evolving as the experience is growing. So we have been working very closely with Eurostat, and I really hope that that continues. Thank you again. And now let's turn some other concrete country cases, and this will focus on new methods for estimating internal migration from CDRs in low and middle income countries. And two of my colleagues from Flowminder, Roland Hassner, survey statistician from Austria, and Galina Veres, senior data scientist from UK, would present. And I'm not sure about the order, so the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will be starting, and
Okay.
our talk will be. Do you see presentation? Yes.
The Roland's share is working now.
Okay. Yeah. This is working perfectly now. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about this. My laptop somehow doesn't work. Microsoft Teams.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So I will be talking about. Our talk will consist of two parts. First part will be about detecting internal migrations from CDS, and my colleague Roland will be speaking about bias adjustment and scaling to the total population, and then we will be showing how to produce monthly internal migration estimates for 3 countries. Next slide, please. So detecting internal migration from CDS. By migration, we understand a change of home location by residents for at least 1 month. And in this presentation, we will show special resolution of home locations on admin 3 level. Next slide, please. So traditionally, internal migrations has been studied using surveys or on census data. But when we are speaking about low and middle income countries, census or surveys data are often outdated or even unavailable. Conducting surveys in such countries can also be very challenging due to inaccessibility or insecurity. Next slide, please. So how we can estimate residents' mobility in such cases? So CDS, as I mentioned before, could be an alternative data source for near real-time estimates of population movements and changes in population density. Next slide, please. So to detect migration, we need to detect it first home locations. Next slide. And there is a lot of challenges in detecting of home locations using CDS data in low and middle income countries due to very sparse data. Subscribers could be very irregular or making very infrequent calls. Subscribers can go for short or medium stays for overnight. 2 or more similar frequency locations could be candidate for home locations as is shown, for example, on top plot. Then subscriber can change phone usage patterns. For example, on the bottom plot, in the period when subscriber become inactive. Then ping-pong effect and rerouting by a mobile operator, which goes not necessarily through nearby towers. Next slide. So how do we know where people live in such cases? We develop a robust monthly home location detection method, which consists of 2 parts, detecting it first daily home locations and then aggregated into monthly level. By daily home locations, we were selecting the most frequent recent last call of a day location in each 7 days window, moving it by 1 day. And then monthly home locations were calculated using rules. If the same location is absolute majority of daily home locations in the current months, we assign subscribers for this month this home location. If this condition doesn't fulfill, but we have at least 1 location, which is more than a third of daily home locations in the current months and majority in the previous months, we assign it as a home location. Otherwise, we assign to subscribers unlocatable. This method can be used for either for all subscribers or only on subset of active subscribers. Next slide, please. So this is example how our algorithm works. So on the left-hand side, we see that we can detect monthly home locations as the blue lines and months when the locations took place. And in right-hand slide, we see situations when there is some challenges, when several locations could be potential home location. Since we don't have any certainty where a person staying, we assign for this month and this subscriber monthly home allocation as unlocatable. Next slide, please. We validated our approach using manually labeled 781 digital subscribers in Haiti using 5 months of data. And all algorithms was run on Haiti server for privacy protection. And we used accuracy, recall, precision, and false positive rates as a measure of performance measure. For monthly home location detection, we achieved accuracy, precision, and recall above 90% in this case, and false positive rate quite low, 0.006%. However, we have to be careful with these numbers because its sample was relatively small. So it could be slightly bit different if you go to bigger data sets. For monthly home relocation detection, we took in consideration both the months of relocation, it has to be correct, and we should correctly assign next location after relocation took place. In this case, we achieved recall of 70%, precision 65%, and false positive rate of 6%. So after running home locations of on all subscribers, we can aggregate it to residence counts and relocations counts. Next slide, please. Variations in residence counts could be considered as a measure of mobility. However, reasons for variations in residence counts between two consecutive months could be due to changes in mobility and changes in phone usage. So the main question is, are changes in residence counts actually influenced mostly by mobility or by changes in phone usage? Our studies shows that in some cases, like on the left side picture, changes in residence counts were actually due to mobility. However, in other cases, changes in residence counts was due to phone usages in middle cases, and sometimes we simple it can be mixed, or we don't even know which contributed to it. So to overcome this problem, we develop a method. Next slide, please, which allows to remove phone usage component from mobility, and we estimating residence from net flows. In this case, we estimate resident subscribers for any given era and given months from estimated resident subscribers from the same era previous months and estimated net flows, which is, in our case, it's difference between estimated inflows and outflows to the era in a given month. And initial months, it's corresponding to either baseline or some baseline period. However, all these estimates are given on subscribers level, and when we need to study migrations, it's desirable to have estimates as a people. So my colleague Roland now, next slide, please, will speak about how to do it.
Thank you, Galina, and I'll continue immediately on bias adjustment and scaling of mobility estimates derived from CDR aggregates. We have identified a methodology for bias adjustment and scaling, and the key reason for this is that CDR data, or really MNO subscribers data, are not a random sample of the population. It cannot be assumed to function as a random sample. So there are indeed biases of CDR indicators. And in 2021, we coordinated and ran a large microcensus in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where in this survey, we asked a couple of questions on mobility and phone use. So from these data, we are able to identify differences in mobility or mobility differentials between mobile phone users and non-users, but also between different groups of mobile phone users. And the graph we are showing here is visualizing these differences, where we found several statistically significant and large differences between, in this case, the Vodacom users that generate the CDR data that we have access to and are able to analyze, and the remaining population, both consisting of non-users and other MNO users. So from this survey and also from other surveys we've been running, it is clear that there are mobility differentials that need to be taken into account. The methodology we have now developed, and this is also a fresh, not off the print yet, it's just before publication, but we are very close to sharing this first with our partners and then also publishing on this. The methodology we currently have is applicable to residence estimates and relocations estimates on the admin 3 level per month. And it involves 4 types of data sources: the CDR aggregates themselves, survey data, existing population estimates, and shapefiles that delineate the areas we are analyzing. I'll keep the formulas here short, but we wanted to include them also as a reference material when we share the presentation later on. And the logic is, as Galina just described, that we start out with a baseline resident estimate. Here, if we're estimating the entire population and mobility of the entire population, we take an existing estimate, or actually a combination of the UN World Population Prospects, the World Urbanization Prospects, a gridded population data set to break it down into admin 3 areas. And this can also be adjusted to a country's needs or a specific user's needs to what is considered to be the most relevant or most reliable data set. And on top of this baseline estimate, for each month, each consecutive month that our time series CDR data covers, we add on the net flow of residents, so the relocations per month that we estimate, and apply a natural growth rate that again is taken from UN data to account for the fact that in most of the countries that we work in, low and middle income countries, the population is usually growing. So it's an iterative method that uses a range of data sources, and the net flows themselves, and this is the heart and the key of this method, combines CDR data and survey data. Why is that so important? Because of the biases. Flows between areas are sometimes affected by mobility differentials. And first of all, we need to take into account that what CDR data accounting is, strictly speaking, SIM movements and not necessarily people movements. So we need to account for the number of SIMs, the average number of SIMs, and also the average number of users per SIM to adjust the adjustment factor, and the scaling factor that takes into account the relative share of these particular phone users out of the total population. And indeed here, because we're looking at flows, the share of these phone users in a particular flow between areas. Now, this has limits statistically and from the survey data that I'm going to come back to in a minute. But the basic idea here, summarized in one graph, is that, again, we derive adjustment and scaling factors from survey data, combine them with the CDR data, this is the top part of the graph, to arrive at estimates of bilateral flows between areas, aggregate them to total inflows, total outflows per area, and add this on top of a baseline estimate to get a time series estimate of a specific population, what is also often referred to as dynamic denominators. The caveats are that these estimates do depend and strongly depend on the input or the baseline population numbers, which do sometimes differ greatly between data sources, particularly the change estimates. The relative estimates depend a lot on the absolute numbers, of course. The granularity of the survey data is much lower than that of the CDR data, particularly if we're looking at thousands of flows between admin 3 areas. To produce separate and unique estimates for each of these flows would require very, very large surveys or even census data, something that we're also looking to implement in countries such as Ghana, where we will be able to analyze census data for validation. And also, rather than assuming that these factors stay constant over time, it is desirable in the future to have longitudinal survey data to be able to also estimate the changes of these factors over time. Difficult because of scarcity of data, as well as validation, comparison with other or ground truth data to see how the estimates compare. This leads us to the next steps that we are currently working on and are planning to do, both in the realm of the direct methods applied to CDR data that Karina was describing, refining and further developing detection of locations and home relocations for different time periods, from daily to monthly, usually, use census data, and also further develop and expand the statistical models, the estimation models that we're using for this. And wrapping up, we would like to give you 2 visuals of the outcomes, how it looks for 3 countries that we're working on and with. That is the DRC, Haiti, and Ghana. All 3 projects or estimates currently being developed or finalized. So here you can see bilateral flows between the admin 3 areas of each country. And indeed, medium number of flows. We selected the top 500 of 1,000 flows here. And this, again, is the heart of the data and the heart of our methodology. And this is then used to also estimate the dynamic populations. Here we are showing admin 3 areas that show population increase on average over the time period we are covering. Increases here in pink, decreases in blue, and the white areas are those that have a rather stable population over the time. And these data are suitable for a whole range of use cases, from health metrics to planning, disaster response, official statistics, obviously, and something we closely develop with our partners and stakeholders and are always open to offer and interested in future projects, because our main aim is to provide statistics that are usable and helpful to the countries and the partners that we work with. Thank you for now, and of course we're open to questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Galina and Roland. So it was very, very interesting, and thank you for sharing the methodology, the background, and also the implementation, and also pointing out the issues you gained during these projects. And I appreciate also the graphs at the end. It was really, the graphical presentation of the results was very impressive. Thank you very much. And there we'll have some room for questions at the end, so please hold on. We still have one presentation, which we are very proud of. This is the groups also have had some energy to work on e-learning, developing an e-learning course, which is the Mobile Phone Big Data Awareness Raising course. That's a basic, which could be useful if you think about a project. And the good news that we're planning to do more. So I would like to ask a colleague from Flowminder also. This is independent, but every of them were working on different projects. Thomas Smallwood, data scientist, and he's working at the UK office of the Flowminder Foundation. So Thomas, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much. Excellent. There we go. Apologies again, everyone, for the delay. I'll move through this quickly so that we don't cut too much into the Q&A time. So very quickly, yeah, I'm going to be talking about the Raising Awareness course that we've just launched, and very quickly going through the contents. We'll cover what the Raising Awareness course is. We'll take a look at the structure of the course, some of the learning materials we've produced, and then we'll quickly take a look at some future plans as well. So if we go to the next slide, and next one, yeah. So the purpose of the course, first of all, is to introduce the key concepts underpinning the use of mobile phone data for a range of audiences, primarily national statistical offices. Highlight the opportunities presented by mobile phone data, explain the strengths and limitations of using MPD, and also outline how to run a successful MPD project, all with the overall aim of supporting NSOs and supporting other users to start their own journey towards using mobile phone data for official statistics. Next slide. So what the structure of the course has 3 main parts. The first is what is mobile phone data? If we can get a click, Clarence. Yeah, so which covers different types of mobile phone data, how mobile phone data are generated, the information that's contained in mobile phone data, and why would you use mobile phone data, particularly the strengths of it, but also the limitations. We then looked at applications of mobile phone data, and particularly we looked at 5 case studies which covered transportation, public health, disaster response, tourism, and information society. And lastly, how to manage mobile phone data projects. including how you go about obtaining mobile phone data, the requirements for work with mobile phone data, and most importantly, how to preserve the individual privacy of subscribers. If we go to the next slide. Also, at the end of it, there's a quiz, and for those who complete the quiz, there's also a certificate. So moving forwards, we'll take a quick look at some of the content. And here we can see one of the example pages from the section on what is mobile phone data. This page in particular is how a CGR is generated, with some text explaining it, and what is hopefully a helpful figure explaining how CGR data is generated. But the other pages that we've got for this are what are the different types of MPD, what information is contained in mobile phone data, and what are the strengths and limitations of mobile phone data. If we move to the next slide, we can see here one of the case studies. So this is case study 2 provided by Ayumi, working at the University of Tokyo, looking at using mobile phone data to inform the government response to a health crisis in the Gambia. And this is joined by 4 other case studies looking at commuters in Tartu in Estonia, an emergency response to an earthquake in Haiti, tourism statistics in Estonia and Indonesia, and information society statistics in Indonesia and Brazil. And then the final section, how to manage mobile phone data projects, looks at several different aspects. And here we can see the content that we wrote for how to secure mobile phone data and preserve individual privacy, again with one of the diagrams that sits on this page. And the other page we've got in this section is how and where do you obtain access to mobile phone data. Next slide. And yes, finally, the end quiz. So the structure of this is 4 questions, and you need to get 75% or 3 out of 4 to pass. And everyone gets 3 attempts to do this. And we have a bank of, I think, 20 questions from which we select 4 at random. And if you pass the test and complete all the lessons, then you too can get a wonderful certificate like the one that I got for myself earlier to prove that I should be up here talking about mobile phone data, in case anyone was doubting that. Next slide, please. So future plans. Really happy to say that we've now launched the course on the UN Global Platform Learning Management System, and the link is in the chat, but you can also go to learning.officialstatistics.org. Next steps, we're looking at perhaps adding some additional use cases over time. We're exploring whether or not we might add some video content, and potentially adding some other information depending on feedback. So we welcome any suggestions for other information that you'd like to see included in this course once you've completed it. Next slide. And we'll of course be working on some future courses as well, linked to the different handbooks, so covering dynamic populations, tourism, migration, information society, displacement and disasters, and transport and commuting. Next slide. Yes, and we welcome any feedback, including your ideas on what courses the training task team subgroup could be working on. And next slide. And lastly, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who contributed to this course, and I hope that that people find it useful. And as I said, we welcome any feedback or suggestions on the course and other types of courses that you'd be interested in future. Thank you very much, and apologies again for the delay in getting started on this section.
Thank you, Tom, and congratulate that you made the course and you have your certificate already. So that shows that you mastered it. But being serious, so I think this is a big step in the work of the task team, and Tom led this subgroup, and that was a very active subgroup working on developing the course. And the first one is always the hardest one, and more to come. So we would like to use this possibility to spread the information more, and you can use your own pace to progress in the different areas of the use of mobile phone data, and hopefully that would help you in the implementation. And then, as Tom pointed out, if you have any specific comments, please send to him or to the MPDTAS team, and we will be happy to incorporate your suggestions. And this is now the time when we made our best to spread the knowledge on the different guides we have been working or we are working on. Different use cases, country cases where we would like, we wanted you to give an appetite to apply in your countries, and this is now the time to have some minutes to have questions, suggestions, comments if you have. And I don't see any hands, any questions in the chat. So I will give the floor for the presenters if they wanted to give their thoughts to the summary. But before doing that, let me repeat that the recording of the webinar will be available at the dedicated website. Also, we will upload a copy of the presentation there, and you will have all the links, so you can make a reference or a link where to reach to. We also place the link to the 5 ready handbooks, methodological guides, so you can have a reference. The bad news is that that unfortunately all of them are just in English. So that's a little bit of kind of caveat at the moment, but we would suggest to use the Google Translate, and at least you will have a glimpse. And if you have any questions, please send it. But I see now a hand from Camilo from Colombia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, thank you very much, Caroline, and thank you very much to all the presenters. So we have 2 particular questions. First one is how has the participation of actors such as Position or Flowminder improved the trust from MNO providers? And secondly, and more specifically, how has this question on transferring personal non-anonymized data been treated in the different negotiations with the MNO providers? Thank you very much all for your presentations.
Thank you. Sim, would you like to react, please?
Yes, I could react, but I think the question how Position or Flowminder has influenced trust should be answered by somebody other than Position and Flowminder.
Okay, then I can start that, because again, these are new areas. So that was one of the topic we started struggling with, how to, that can be, Camilo could start how to get to the data, and how you can convince the MNOs that this data will work according to the Statistical rules. And we have tackled to these issues in the first volume of this compilation guide. We will also copy a reference to it, so I would rather suggest to do that. And again, so this is so we are statisticians working mobile phone data for official statistics, so we definitely follow these rules. Now, whether Sim, Roland, Galina would want to add to that, please.
So I can add, because I'm working directly with mobile data, so we have very strict rules. So nothing leaves server, which is actually data staying inside of the country. If we work with, say, DRC, it's staying on the server, mobile operator server data, so we are not even allowed for internal analysis to take out anything or presentation. Therefore, in my presentation, I put synthetic data, synthetic trajectories, so I couldn't show anything actual. So only aggregates allowed to come out. So we sign agreements, and then we follow very strictly these agreements.
Thank you, Ganila. I fully agree. So that's a peculiar field, and we can talk more about that. But that's again we covered mostly. So the protocol should be followed, and honestly, our plan, the next step in our plans is to work with synthetic data, because we cannot give you data itself. So we can give you examples, but not from real data. From synthetic data you can play with while you're applying in tourism, in migration, in transport statistics. So we would not share any kind of country data, because the countries do have very strict rule how to use and manipulate their data. And I see Esperanza first, and then Ronald from my office.
I think Ronald raised his hand first, but I think it's ladies first, your rule. So
Okay.
I'll take the floor quickly. Just to mention the question from Camilo. So Colombia, if you remember, was one of our pilot countries in the ITU when we conducted the project on mobile phone big data. And based on those experiences, we can attest that there are different data access models that could be used to ensure that the mobile operators will be cooperative in these projects. There are, of course, different laws that exist in different countries, and we have to work with different stakeholders in the country to be able to access the data and take advantage of the use of those mobile phone big data. There are techniques as well and tools that could anonymize the data and other information related to the data access and data processing. Again, I'm coming back to the guides. They are well covered in the guides. I invite you to check them and familiarize yourselves on those topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Esperanza. Ronald, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Karoy. Thanks to all presenters. Very, very impressive, all of the work that you have presented here today. So on the topic of the access to data, and I think Fabio showed it already in one of his slides that access to data is key to get the whole project going. A few comments from my side on that. So yes, one, you could have legal arrangements. We could have also technology helping in accessing data, like these privacy enhancing technologies which could be used. But I think most importantly is that we can explain to the mobile network operators what the purpose is of what we want to do with the data. We have a request. We're working with the Maldives on this, and this is one of the things that we're telling them is like, okay, explain to the mobile network operator what the purpose is of where you're going to use the data for. In their case, they want to use it to do an evaluation of their population census, get some additional data on that. You can see what kind of detail do you need on the output side, and then work backwards what that means for access on the input data. So I think explaining to the mobile network operators about what you exactly want to do is very key. What Fabio indicated is that the data stays at mobile network operator. That is, I think, key. If the mobile network operator has data scientists that can prepare data, would be great. So you minimize the risk of any breach in privacy, because you don't want to break the trust of public or the public trust on use of mobile phone data. I think that is very important. That's something that we would like to emphasize, that we want to be very careful working with mobile phone data. There is public perception on this, and you don't want to have any kind of mistrust by the public in a way their mobile phone data, if you like, is being used by any kind of institute. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. And Roland.
Yes, thanks. I wanted to respond to two questions from the chat. One was about any efforts to cover also children and other non-phone users in the estimates, and the other one about the length of the time series. First, yes, exactly. This is one of the biases, the uncovered population, and that almost by definition includes children, particularly young children that do not use phones and thus leave no CDR traces. This is precisely why we're bringing in survey data to ask households about mobility of all household members, and then also include these populations in the estimates. And on the length of the time series, I just checked, and both for the Democratic Republic of Congo and for Haiti, we do have time series now that span almost exactly 3 years. So also our estimates will cover all this time period, which then brings in another methodological questions, how to align such long time series with existing population estimates, but it can be done, and we will also include this in our considerations. This answers the questions.
Thank you very much, Roland. I'm not sure whether Fabio wants to add to that, because he signaled at a point. Seemingly
No.
not. No. Okay.
No,
Okay.
I think this was. I put some link in the chat.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yes.
I think this. Yes. Just want to make sure that everybody understand that exchanging data is not the way we think data linking or data fusion should be performed in the future.
And my reaction would be almost the same kind of logic there for Camilo, that that's a big step if you include in the legislation, to this access. Well, that's a different story how the MNOs would react, but I suppose that this Eurostat project could give a good example, and hopefully the write-up would help the reach out to the MNOs too. So I'm positive. Actually, I shall say that I was very impressed. We had the workshop along the 7 International Conference in November, where we had one particular mobile network operator from Indonesia who was very positive, very supportive of the work what the BPS Statistics Indonesia has done. And I think that's a big booster, and hopefully more and more countries would follow suit. So I think we have covered everything in the chat, and I don't see any further hands. So I would like to thank first the presenters for their work and for their presentation. They were very useful and interesting. And would like also to thank the audience to stay with us for 90 minutes. And again, we're gonna to publish the recording of this meeting as well as the presentations. So please come back and visit our website, and you can revisit this. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks.